Yitzi, first Shabbos of Tafshin Pei Aleph. Shall we talk some Parsha?
Let's do it.
This week, Parshat Azinu, we find one of the most famous stories about Moshe Rabbeinu, but when you take a second to actually think about it, it's really odd. At the end of the Parsha, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe that he should go up to Har Ha'evarim. Since he won't be able to enter the land of Eretz Yisrael, he gets to see the land of Eretz Yisrael. If you take a moment, think about a person that for more than 40 years of their life, they have been devoted to one mission, to one task, to lead the nation of Am Yisrael out of Egypt and into Eretz Zavat Chalav, like Kadosh Baruch Hu told him back in Sefer Shmot. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu has been doing day in, day out, taking care of this nation to bring them to Eretz Yisrael. So much so that even his father-in-law had to intervene and tell him to stop working so hard. But we got used to this idea that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't get into Eretz Yisrael, and instead he got to look at the land. But again, think about it as a human being. What kind of tzivui is this? Moshe Rabbeinu does not get into the land. So instead of getting the trophy, how about just look at it and see what it really would have looked like if you would have been in there? Why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing this to Moshe? Not only is Moshe Rabbeinu not going into Eretz Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to rub it into what he's missing in Eretz Yisrael. Is it really fair for Moshe Rabbeinu?
Yeah, I actually haven't thought of it that way. You're right, meaning it's like, it's not enough. He's not going in now. Take a look at what you're missing. This is his last thing he's going to do. There's got to be something more than that in telling him to go see. It's obviously not just to see what he's missing. There's obviously some importance in this mission of him seeing the land. This brings to mind what shows up by Avram Avinu as well, where Hashem says, Sana inecha min hamakom asher ata omed, from the place you're standing, look around, because everything you see, and again, what's the importance? Why doesn't he just tell him the whole land I'm going to give to your children? What makes this question even greater is that the following pasuk, he says, Kum v'yitalech ba'aretz. Now don't look at the land, go around, walk, and again, because I'm going to give it to you. But if we look carefully at the psukim, we see a difference between the two. In the first one, when it says look at the land, it says I'm going to give it to you and to your generations to come forever. Whereas when it talks about kum v'hitalech ba'aretz, you walk the land, it says ki lecha itnena, because I'm giving it to you. So in a certain sense, physically walking represents a physical ownership, right? You're walking around, you walk the land, a sign at certain territory, but seeing seems to represent something beyond that, seems to represent maybe some sort of spiritual connection, spiritual relationship. We see with Avram Avinu himself the concept of seeing, where as he's walking to the Akedah, when he sees the place of the Akedah, vayaret hamakom merachok, he sees it from afar, he turns immediately to, Chazal say, Ishmael and Eliezer, the two people that are with him, and he says, you wait here, me and Yitzchak will go ahead. What happened at that point that he suddenly tells them to wait aside? He's not there yet. Why doesn't he wait till he's closer and then tell them? It says he's far away. It seems that the minute he sees the place, something happened. There's a connection. You know, we have this concept of when you're on a long journey and you're waiting to get somewhere. We have this actually in Daf Yomi just lately, where they're on the boat and he looks at like this telescope, and when he sees he's close enough, something changes. Their status halachically changed. There's something about seeing which builds a connection. Until you see, we don't know how long it's going to be, but once we see, I'm already connected. I'm already partially there. So in a certain sense, Moshe Rabbeinu is not just taking a look at what he's missing. He's building a connection. By seeing the land, he's not just out of the picture. They went in, he stayed out. He's building that connection. But I think this isn't only about Moshe Rabbeinu. Am Yisrael needs Moshe Rabbeinu. It's true. The pasuk says you're not going into the land, and we discussed this several weeks back, that Moshe probably wasn't the right leader to go into the land. They would have made him into an idol. As the pasuk here says, Ma'altem bi, you stole Bnei Israel from me, like stealing a hekdesh, like stealing something from the mikdash. So although Moshe Rabbeinu may not be the one to enter the land because of what they would make him into, they still needed him. And they needed him maybe not physically entering the land, but with his ability to see. So although he's not physically there, they needed his influence. They needed his vision. And you know, vision can be a little tricky, because when we see, we usually see only the surface of things. We often don't see beyond that initial layer. And this is one of the biggest dangers when entering Eretz Yisrael, because outside all looks great. We have a home and we have things are growing and we have our land and everything's great. And as all of Sefer Devarim discusses, we can get very caught up with that initial layer. And that's why we need Moshe Rabbeinu's vision. Moshe Rabbeinu's ability as a Navi, as a Choseh, to see not that initial layer, to see beyond, see for generation, to see the depth of things, to see Eretz Yisrael and not only see the outer layer, but see the inner layer of Eretz HaKodesh. We need Am Avram Avinu's initial vision, which will achieve Lizarachait Nena Adolam. But as we're entering Eretz Yisrael, we also need Moshe Rabbeinu's vision. He's going up there to see the land, not only for himself, but to continue his mission. Maybe not physically entering Eretz Yisrael, but continuing to influence us with his unique ability to see beyond, to see within, to see in an eternal way, something we really, really need as we enter Eretz Yisrael.
It's very interesting, actually, that you mentioned Avraham Avinu, because when we look at the last psukim of the Torah, at the end of Parshat V'zot Bracha, when Moshe Rabbeinu actually goes up to Har Ha'evarim, and Moshe looks at the land, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows him the land in the different places, and then Hashem says, "This is the land I promised Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov." And says Rashi on the spot over there, "Now go to them and tell them that I fulfilled my promise." And it's a mind-boggling Rashi that he needs Moshe Rabbeinu to go to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to tell them that HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfilled his Shavua. Obviously, he doesn't need Moshe Rabbeinu to do that, but that's maybe exactly what you were saying. That's the closure over here. Just the same way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Avraham to look at the land and to walk throughout the land, not for Avraham only, but for the Zaracha, for us, for his descendants. Same thing with Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not only about giving Moshe the prize of being able to see the land even though you can't go in, but it's actually more for us. It's part of his mission, part of his task. Although, like Rashi again emphasizes over there, that there's a Gzeira. Moshe Rabbeinu cannot enter the land, but his presence is still needed in the land. His influence is still needed on the land for us as part of what he has to give over to us. And as we start our life in the land that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avraham Avinu.
It's fascinating about vision because we often tend to really look at it as a very shallow thing. You're just getting caught up in what you see. We have Lo Taturu Achrei Levavchem, but here we see that vision can also be a very strong power of connection, of seeing beyond, of seeing things in the distance, whether it's with Rabban Gamliel's telescope or with the eyes of a Navi. Any powerful tool can go both ways. It can be a real negative or it can be a real positive. We need to hold on to this ability to see that Moshe Rabbeinu teaches.
You know, it's exactly like Helen Keller said, the only thing that's worse than being blind is having sight and no vision. That's exactly the differentiation you were making. Sometimes we're able to see things with our eyes. That's our simple sight. But what's greater than that is the vision. And as we enter now, Shana Shishit, the 6th year of counting of Shemitah, the first week of the 6th year, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us on the 6th year that he's going to give us his special blessing for the 6th year that's going to last for 3 years in the land of Eretz Yisrael, where Hashem is the one who's looking at the land all the time. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with his vision, blesses the land every single day. We should keep on reminding ourselves that what we see around us happening many times is just our sight. And remember that there's a greater vision behind, the greater vision HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avram, the greater vision HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Moshe Rabbeinu, and the greater vision that has been leading Am Yisrael through many, many generations. And as we discussed last week about Ori V'ishi, the light that gives us the vision, that directs us towards the right goals, towards the right place, we should take that light with us from Rosh Hashanah into the next year. And as we also daven on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the famous pasuk from Tehillim, Ke'enei avadim el Adonaihem, ke'enei shivcha el gvirta, ke'en enenu l'Hashem Elokeinu ad she'yulchanenu. And we should be zocheh this Yom Kippur to have the full redemption of Ori V'ishi, the Yeshua, and receive the great forgiveness that Yom Kippur can give us, and have in Mitzvah Hashem an incredible year ahead of us.
Amen. Shkoyach, and you should have a Gmar Chatima Tova.
Gmar Chatima Tova to you and to all of Am Yisrael, and in Mitzvah Hashem, we'll speak again next week. We're talking Torah videos on different topics. Check out our YouTube channel.